Welcome back! In this video, I'm going to talk more about online identity, specifically as it relates to the ePortfolios that we'll be constructing in this class. So we've already established that online identity is fractured, meaning that I might inhabit very different personas in different places, but that it's also fluid, meaning that it kind of automatically changes based on the context that I'm in. I don't always have to think about, oh, I'm at school, I want to present myself in such and such a manner, even though I might think that at times. It's more automatic than that. So when you're constructing an online identity in an ePortfolio, there are a lot of things to consider. But like every other piece of communication, you always want to start with audience. Who will be reading your ePortfolio? What purpose do you want it to serve for those people? In some sense, the ePortfolio is a really good example of how identities are fractured, because on the one hand, the ePortfolio audience is me. I will be giving you a grade for the ePortfolio, so it should represent you as a student and what you've learned in this class so I can assess that learning. On the other hand, ePortfolios are often created with potential future employers in mind, and that's a major audience that I specifically want you to be writing the ePortfolio for, not just me. So you'll need to think about not just how you can show me, the teacher, what you've learned in this class. You'll also want to think about how you can show potential employers that you've learned things in this and other classes that those employers might want to make use of. That, of course, begs the question, what are employers looking for? What do they want in an employee? Well, that's going to depend on a lot of things, and you may not always know the answer to that question. Certainly not at this point, when you're maybe not even applying for jobs. The answer to that question will depend on the particular job you're applying to, the particular workplace culture in that workplace, and even the individual people in HR and your department who will be conducting the hiring search. So part of the difficulty in creating an ePortfolio is to kind of construct an identity for an audience that you might not even be sure of what they want. The question might be phrased another way. What counts as professional? While that might seem like an easy question with a quick, easy answer, it's really not. What counts as professional in different fields will vary greatly, even if a lot of people have a similar idea of what professional means, and even if career services tries to tell you one particular way to be professional. I like to use the example of tattoos. So at least when I was going to career services presentations in the rural South in the mid-2000s, career counselors liked to tell people that you probably better cover up those tattoos. They're not very professional. I like to think that that has shifted slightly in our culture, but depending on who you're talking to, that might still be a piece of advice that someone gives you. So, like if you're going to an academic convention or a job fair, someone might advise you to cover up any visible tattoos that you might have. But what if, for example, you're a tattoo artist going to a tattoo convention, something that totally exists, by the way. If you didn't have tattoos as a tattoo artist at a tattoo convention, people might kind of look at you as suspect. They at the very least would probably not, automatically assume that you're a tattoo artist or that you belong at that convention. It's not necessarily that you're a walking billboard for your own work, but having tattoos signifies that you're a part of a culture that values body art, which you ostensibly do if you're a body artist. So, what does that say about our concept of professionalism? The things that signify or symbolize professionalism will differ from field to field and within fields. These cultural symbols have particular histories. They come from particular places and particular times, and they can be problematic. To give an example, I often work very hard to adorn or put on the symbols of professionalism as I understand them when I'm on campus. I wear glasses, which I think makes me look studious and academic. I often wear blazers, though I'm not wearing one this week. I put on jewelry, I make sure my hair looks nice, but despite all this effort to look like a professional at a university, I've still had several instances where I'm on campus and people have asked me for my student ID. And I politely reply, I don't have a student ID, but will my faculty ID work? So why does this happen, even when I try really hard to adorn these cultural symbols of professionalism? Well, that must mean that there are other aspects of my identity that people are reading as student rather than faculty. Most likely, these aspects are my age and my gender. People don't expect faculty members to be young, and sometimes they don't expect us to be female, even if they're not really conscious of that expectation, even though there are actually many academic fields in which women are the majority. Another example of this kind of reading was in the news in fall 2016. A passenger on a Delta Airlines flight from Detroit to Minneapolis became unresponsive, and flight attendants asked, "Are there any physicians on board?" A black woman pressed the call button but was told, "We don't have time to talk to you. We're looking for actual physicians." The attendant erroneously judged whether or not this woman was an actual physician in an instant, just based on her looks. This woman didn't meet the flight attendant's preconceived notions of what a doctor looks like. I often don't meet people's preconceived notions of what a faculty member looks like, and yet here we are. So, there are a lot of questions to consider as we are constructing professional identities online through an ePortfolio. What kinds of identities will employers in my field be looking for? Can I construct that kind of identity? What about my other personal identities? To what degree can I separate myself as a professional from my other personal selves? And how might I achieve this through visual and textual representations of myself online? Do I even want to inhabit a particular kind of professional identity that I think employers are looking for? Or do I want to push back on those notions of professionalism? How will these choices affect my audience? There are a lot of questions to consider, and you might find that the answers contradict each other or bring up problems or issues that can't be easily resolved. In the context of this class, that's okay. What I want to see you doing is thinking critically, a la Selber's critical literacies, about what choices you're making to represent your identities and what choices the technologies you're using even allow you to make. You'll be writing about that in this week's discussion post. The ePortfolio is a tricky assignment because there's not really a right answer to it. There are only choices and justifications for those choices, and that's what I'll be looking for in your assignments.